The Brooklyn Vegan Show is a podcast about music brought to you by the music blog and online record store Brooklyn Vegan. Make sure to subscribe to hear all of our upcoming episodes featuring interviews with musicians and more, and find us 24/7 at brooklynvegan.com, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Hey, welcome to the new episode of the Brooklyn Vegan Show. I'm BV editor Andrew Sacker, and today's episode is with Mike York, guitar player for Pianos Become the Teeth. If you're unfamiliar, Pianos were part of the new wave of post-hardcore that took off in the late 2000s and early 2010s, alongside bands like Touche Amore, La Dispute, Defeater, Balance of Composure, Title Fight, bands that sort of took post-hardcore back underground, created their own sort of DIY circuit of bands, and eventually got a lot of attention and kind of blew up on a more mainstream level. And a lot of those bands, including Pianos, are still making amazing music today. In our conversation, we talked about those early days, those DIY tours that Pianos and their peers did before they had too many eyes on them. And we also talked about the moment where those bands all kind of started to take off. They all a lot of them signed to Epitaph around the same time, including Pianos, who were actually the first of their friends to go to the label. And they helped bring a lot of attention to that scene. And, that's the reason why people are still paying attention today. And Pianos have a great new record called Drift. We talk a lot about that record. It's a little darker and weirder than what the band has done before, and we get into some of the influences behind it and the way it was recorded. They did it at Mike's uncle's cabin in the woods. They used analog tape echo. We talk about the band's upcoming tour, including dates with reunited Screamo legends Jerome's Dream. We talk about the Baltimore scene that Pianos are part of, alongside everyone from Beach House to Turnstile to JPEG Mafia. It was a super fun chat. There's a lot more in there, and here it is. So to start, we're on video. I can see you. It's a podcast. No one can see us. So no one will see it, but I'm going to steal a note from Nardwar and I'm going to show you a funny artifact.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So this is the poster of my first Pianos Become the Teeth show. It's Touche Amore, Code Orange when they were Code Orange kids.
Yeah.
Sea Haven, and it was at SUNY Purchase and Level Up, who at the time were just a Purchase band, were on that bill.
Oh, man. Okay. I remember, I'm trying to remember now. I remember playing that show, and there's a specific picture. So I had a picture of that I was taken at that show that I had like 6 layers of like a hoodie on, a flannel on, a jacket on, a coat on. It was like, for some reason, I had like 15 layers of clothes, and I remember it was taken at that show. But I love that show, man. That was a really fun time.
For sure. Yeah, that was. I mean, that wasn't your only time playing Purchase, was it?
That's a good question. I think it was probably, now that I think about it, because that was actually our first tour that wasn't a like DIY booked tour, just doing basements and stuff. Touche took us out for their first headline run. And so that was the first time we had ever actually done anything that, wasn't in, basements and stuff like that. It was mainly doing like, actual venues and things. So that might have actually been the only time we did play there, but I could be wrong. I feel like at this point, there's so much that kind of blends into one giant thing that it's just like this goo of how many shows we've played before that I think like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this and that. But I think that might have been the only time now that I can think about it.
Yeah, it was a cool place for shows.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess it was Touche, I think, played there at least twice, because I remember they played like when to the beat of a dead horse came out, or I'm saying that wrong. And then like came back for this one, and it was like way more people came this time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was awesome, man. I had a great time. I had a really good time.
Yeah. So just like thinking about that era, like, and you were just saying too, like, your shows before that were just these like DIY basements and stuff. I feel like it's just like a fascinating thing to look back, like the scene that you and your friends like Touche and La Dispute and kind of stuff like sort of built is wild, because like, yeah, it just was these like DIY basement shows, and you kind of built like this ecosystem of just like, you found the other like-minded people from like across the country. And then like fast forward 5 years and to like critical acclaim, Epitaph Records. And can you like
Yeah.
sort of reflect a bit on like those DIY shows and stuff, and like what it was like before anybody was paying attention?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, so let me think here. So the first real thing that we tried to do our first big US tour. Like our first time that was like, I mean, some of our goals, like initially in the band, was, or at least for me, was like, I just want to see California. I've never been out there. I just want to be able to see the country and do something. And so in 2009, we had done a bunch of like smaller, 1 week, 2 week, maybe even like 20 some day tours prior to this. But in 2009, we booked our first like, 35-day trek across the US. We were going to do a month. Let's, just hit everywhere that we can. And, the shows were fine. Nothing at the time like amazing because we were just playing shows, but like
Mm-hmm.
hindsight's 2020. So you can always kind of reflect on that. But, we got to Iowa and we were supposed one of the shows we were really looking forward to. There used to be this place called the Ghost House in Iowa in Des Moines, or no, sorry, in Nebraska maybe. It might have been Nebraska. Either way, it was one of those, and we were really looking forward to playing the show, and our van just blew up, and we were stuck in Iowa for we were stuck in Iowa. The show was in Nebraska. We were stuck in Iowa for like 4 days. Uh, Finally got the van repaired, and then ended up getting all the way across the country. Played a bunch more shows. Just trying to catch up with the rest of the tour, do everything. And at the time, and this is 2009, so like mid 2009, we had just put out Old Pride, um, as like some friends of ours put out like the CD of it for us to like, play and take across the country and stuff like that. And, there was this weird kind of like bubbling thing happening kind of in the atmosphere of a lot of these bands doing, well, I mean, not that we were even considered, or not that we really consider ourselves so much like a part of most of it. We were just playing shows because we wrote a record. So it was like we wrote a record, play shows. Some of our protege that we were looking up to so much was like this band from Baltimore called Ruiner. And Ruiner their whole ethos was just like, you just tour nonstop. Tour nonstop. Eventually people will pick up on you. But the only way to do anything is to tour nonstop. And, that's almost 15 years ago now. But like thinking about it then, it was like, that's the only way we're ever going to be able to get any of our name out there with anything. So we just pretty much took their kind of ethos with us and started booking shows and touring as much as we could. And by some stroke of luck, man, I mean, between 2009 and 2010, funny enough, in 2000, so after that initial tour, like that 2009 tour, I was like, man, there is no way I'm going to be able to convince these dudes to go back out on tour again after like a van breaking down. It's costing us so much money. But we did, we were all young and just like, yeah, well, why the hell not? Like, why wouldn't you? Like, we got nothing else going on. So we would constantly be doing tours and tours. And then in the summer of 2010, we played a place in somewhere in California. I can't remember exactly where it was at, but Elliot, who plays drums in Touche now, was in another band. And we played with his band and a bunch of other bands at this shed somewhere in the middle of California. And, we got along really good with him and just like a lot of the other bands that were playing. It was just kind of like making friends. We were just literally going to shows, making friends, playing the show, moving on. And then just do that for, 50 nights in a row. And then eventually when Touche started, when they put out To the Beat of a Dead Horse, they were playing Charm City Art Space in Baltimore. And when they showed up, Elliot was in the van with them. We were like, holy shit, man. Like, how did you, like, are you in this band now? And he had just joined, really. And he had been telling them, like, oh, like, I played with this band in California. You guys got to play with, we got to play with them. And we ended up playing with them in Baltimore. It was just these, like, kind of connections, it really became like this kind of super organic thing where you just like go to a show, you talk with the band that you just dig the vibe that they are, and then you just form a friendship. And it really became that way pretty much 2009 on. We just started playing shows with Touche. We played shows with Balance and Composure when they came through doing a South by run, Lemuria, um, Defeater, Make Do and Mend, like all these bands. We just ended up just being friends, really. And then I honestly don't know what happened, but it seemed like the stuff that all of our bands were doing kind of started catching in some way. And we just kind of rode with it in the way of just it being fun. It was never like man, we gotta like capitalize on this or do. It was just like we were touring nonstop because it was fun, and we got to see our friends a lot, and then our friends would ask us to go on tour with them, and it was like, of course, why not? And we all just kind of grew together in these kind of super organic way. And it really just came down to the fact that it was just a blast being around our friends, and we just happened to get to write records that people thankfully enjoyed and gave us a really amazing career because of that. Those shows were a blast because it's like in real time you could really see kind of like from the start of the tour to an end of a tour, in the days before Instagram and all that stuff. I mean, you would like get emails from people, or you'd start seeing like your name pop up in message boards and stuff. And it was like, oh, cool. Like people dig what we're doing. So yeah, it was cool, man. I mean, it was really just like a really organic growth that it was an excuse to hang out with friends. And we're just really, really lucky that it caught on and anybody really gave a damn about it. So like, I'm beyond thankful for that.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, not to like exaggerate things, I guess, but like in a way it almost reminds me sort of like the narrative in Our Band Could Be Your Life. Like it's kind of interesting because it's like the internet was around for this, but it was almost like even with the internet existing, you guys and like-minded bands kind of just like you said, like you followed Runer's advice and you're like took to the road and did it just like, oh, like you're from California, you're in Baltimore, like we'll put you up here, like you can play a show with us. And it
Totally.
just, yeah, it felt very like that because it's so interesting too how like, like people throw around the word scene, but like all these bands are from different cities. And
Totally.
yeah, and it was all just like that sort of word of mouth, like, yeah, it's very like cool organic thing that happened.
And in reality, it was really interesting too, because I mean, while I do think people always kind of put the monk here on all the bands of like, oh, if you like La Dispute, you'll like Touche and stuff. But I really never thought any of our bands really sounded like one another. I think we had the same kind of ethos with just wanting to make like music that was like emotionally captivating as well as interesting musically and just stuff that we wanted to hear. So I think something that I loved from it was the fact that all of those bands sounded so vastly different really from each other, but we all got to kind of create something together.
For sure. And I think it makes sense. Like the fact that you liked each other's music, it would make sense that a fan might like, you're like, oh, well, if I'm in Pianos Become the Teeth and I like La Dispute, then people who,
Totally.
yeah, like,
Totally. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and it was also just like, speaking from the perspective of someone who watched those shows, like, this was like the late 2000s. This was like peak
Yeah.
Warp Tour. And like, I don't want to like diss anybody in particular, but, it was like very like that real kind of cheesy metalcore stuff was taking over. And then all of a
Sure.
sudden there were like these bands making like post-hardcore or whatever you might call it that spoke to what I think a lot of people were looking for, had liked in the past. And
Totally.
so like I remember the first time I heard like La Dispute were probably the first one I heard, and I was like, I can't believe a band like this exists. Like I was
Oh,
just like, I
totally.
didn't,
Totally.
like.
Yeah, man. I feel like, man, like the first time I remember hearing, um, when Funeral Diner had the Underdark, and like one of the bands that kind of sprung from that both Chad and I were like, holy shit, was when that band Who Calls So Loud came out, that were like the members of Portraits of Past and Funeral Diner and stuff. And when we heard that record, it was like, I can't believe a band like this exists. It's like heavy, depressing country screamo ambient, like whatever it is, like this is what I'm into. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, just like you really see kind of this stuff take shape with a lot of like, oh, you like this band, you'll like this band, and just kind of bleeds out from there. It's still mind blowing to me sometimes that people like our band. I mean, it's really humbling a lot of times to be able to be like, we've had so many amazing opportunities that people even give a damn about what we do, that it's just to be in the same breath as a lot of the bands that people talk about or even think they're influential is just like kind of crazy to me.
And I mean, we're at the point now where, like, I mean, Pianos Become a Teeth is an influential band. Like, there's a whole new generation of
Yeah.
bands that totally cite you guys and Touche and La Dispute and Defeater and like all those bands. And
Which is insane. I mean, I don't think that will ever settle in with me, that like I could be somebody's favorite band. It's such a hard thing for me to like wrap my head around, which I think is amazing. I mean, it's just like there's literally no better feeling than that to me.
it's funny because, like, so I literally just recorded an episode with Dan Campbell from the Wonder Years.
Mm-hmm.
He said exactly the same thing. He was like, I have to understand that there are people who look at my band the way I look at the Get Up Kids, and that makes no sense to me.
Totally,
Yeah.
man. And it's really hard to grasp that. I'm beyond thankful for it, but it's just so hard to grasp that anybody would care.
So let's talk a little bit about when, people started to care on a bigger level. Like, I mean, you and basically all your friends signed to Epitaph like around the same time. Who was like the first band to go to Epitaph, and how did that whole sort of like exodus, or not the wrong word yet, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
migration to
I honestly think we were the first ones.
Okay.
I think we signed in 2013. I think it was 2013. We were on tour with La Dispute for their Rooms of the House headline run, and we kind of had the bubblings of like, oh yeah, like we'll have a few meetings with some other labels to like just kind of know where we're going. They have the demos of the stuff we're writing, and Brett from Epitaph was just beyond kind with everything, and was just like, would love to talk to you guys, would love to come out. And we met with him, and we at that point we really were looking to do everything we possibly could do as a band while retaining everything that we were going to do as a band regardless. Like, we had already had the record written, so it's like if you dig where we're going, then I think we're like, it was almost like if you hear these demos and you can hear where we're going with this, then I think we'll be in good company with a lot of this stuff. So I think at the time, La Dispute was doing Rooms of the House, which was self-released, but through their label, which was through, I think, like Vagrant or something within that realm. Touche was still on Death Wish. Defeater was still, I think, on Bridge 9. I think, like, most of our friends' bands were still doing what they were doing. But I think, yeah, we pulled the trigger going with Epitaph. And then I think it was shortly after, all of our friends' bands started coming over to that. And not saying that we set a trend with it or anything, but I think like it felt really good to be able to be like, we were the ones that got to be like, man, I have been listening to Epitaph samplers and Epitaph bands since literally I was 8 years old. So the fact that I'm having lunch with Brett Gurewitz and he cares at all about my band is like mind blowing to me. And it just, the vibe of them being excited about what we were doing was exciting. So literally there was no reservation. It was like, they're so excited about it. We're excited about it. They've literally given us like free reign to do whatever the hell we want with everything. And they always have. So it's like, why would we not do this? Like, I can't think of a reason not to. And especially at the time where it was like, we were definitely edging on something where we were writing demos and was like, this sounds really different than kind of like the Lack Long After era stuff. But you can see the through line and the thread that I think we were kind of placing from Old Pride to Lack to the Hiding, like the split with Touche. Like, there was a through line that you could hear us moving into like a interesting, more melodic grip of a lot of stuff, but trying to retain that kind of intensity, like that emotional intensity, I guess. And I think right then when we did that tour, it was we did that La Dispute tour, and then we went right afterwards. I believe we went on tour with a co-headline run with Tiger's Jaw. And that, I think we could all see was like the kind of turning point of like, we'd play shows and it was like, yep, there's, you sold out of records tonight, or you sold out of shirts, or you're playing and there's 200 kids that know the words to every song that you're playing. And we had never had that. I mean, I think Pianos has always been kind of like um, a band's band, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, I feel like there are plenty of our friends and peers and stuff who've gotten way bigger audience wise than us by far. But I think we hold our own with our friends and hold a lot with like kind of how people, or not necessarily hold our own, but I think like a lot of times we kind of fall into this very niche pocket that a lot of our friends really dig, and our fans that who do love our band like really love our band. And that Tiger's Jaw tour was the moment that felt like, man, maybe this is bigger than what we thought it was. Maybe this is growing. Maybe this is something that we had not thought of before. And we literally did that tour. It was like probably about 6 or 7 weeks. And then we were home for one day and then flew to Australia to do another tour with La Dispute. So from pretty much March through August, we were out on tour. And you could see that kind of trajectory coming up of being like, man, this is wild that this is actually happening and stuff is happening. And, when we put out when we put out Keep You, we kind of knew that it was going to be this like, there's probably going to be a lot of people that are going to have like the what the fuck moment with that. But that was exciting. Like I've always been in the boat of like wanting to challenge both myself as well as the people that dig what you do, just to like grow. You can't just stick in the same pocket forever. And I think when that record finally settled in and we started playing on it, we played like Riot Fest in Chicago, like was our first show on that, like just in the fall when it started coming out, and it was pouring down rain. And as we're setting up in the rain, it was like this flood of like 1,500, 2,000 people like came to our stage, and it was just like, holy shit, like this is crazy that this is even something people want to watch. So yeah, there was like this slow upward trajectory, and I've always loved the fact that our band always kind of felt like it was going on that. We've always been a slow burn. We never went from 0 to 100, within the span of like a month, but like we've always been a slow burn that's taken us, over 15 years or so to get to the place that we're at today. And I think we're continuing to be a slow burn, and I think that's okay with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's really cool about the new record is like, like since Wait for Love. I mean, I guess Wait for Love was also 4 years after. No, but this one's a little bit longer of a gap, right? Because that Wait for Love was
Yeah.
really early in 20. Yeah, so it's like a little bit longer of a gap. There's a pandemic.
Yeah.
You kind of hit the 10-year mark. You did the tour again with Touche, where you did the old records, and so I feel like there's almost like this little like there's this like moment in time. You're like, all right, like Pianos Become the Teeth are now like, you know, you've been able to reflect on the older days, and like this is
Totally.
and so like sometimes you see bands, like I'm sure we can all think of bands where they hit that point where like, it starts to become like, okay, we've been around, we're established, people want a certain thing from us. And
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes you see bands fall into the trap of like, we're going to go back to maybe like our most popular record. What I think is really cool about the new Pianos record is that it sounds like the progression from Wait for Love. Like it's just like you're right.
Yeah.
It took a while. You had celebrated the old record's anniversary, but then you got right back on track, and it's this forward trajectory. And
Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you, man. Yeah, I hope that people like hear it that way. I think we were actually at practice last night and talking about it, how it was like trying to kind of build a set list with these songs with old records and stuff. And it's interesting to see how some of the new stuff actually fits in with like it fits in more interestingly when we try to play like Lack Long After stuff. And it's like this kind of fits in better than maybe like Wait for Love did. And though it's really cool to kind of see how just we as a band have kind of gone back and forth with creating stuff that is even challenging for us. I mean, it's cool. I'm super proud of being able to do that.
totally. And you did this record with Kevin Bernsten, who
Mm-hmm.
produced the first two, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
do you think that has anything to do with maybe like it fitting in with the older stuff in a way, or?
Um, I'm sure, but
Mhm.
I think it can't even be distilled down to that. I mean, Kevin, I will sing Kevin's praises to like anyone who will listen because Kevin literally made the development of this record so easy. Like we spent like, and no exaggeration, not straight, but like over the course of we started this record recording it in January of 2021, and the recording process really didn't end until September. I mean, we spent most of the year like recording and then scrap that, let's go back and redo this whole song, or scrap that, we need to add this part, or we had been doing demo. We'd go to my uncle's house and write a bunch, and then come back, reflect on the demos, go back to my uncle's house, pull all the demos apart, and then redo them. And Kevin gave us the time and energy to be able to do that in the studio too. And I think he was just a really good voice to help us kind of stay on track, um, with being able to develop a lot of the wildest ideas that we really wanted, but being able to really make them come to fruition. Because it's like so much of this record were like I mean, as simple as something like the bass part, like the big heavy bass part in Skiv, um, was something that David and I were joking around at my uncle's house one night, like super late, and was just like, what if we did this bass part, but it was all of Zach's pedals, every single one of them was on? What would that sound like? And it was a lot of doing stuff like that on the record that I'm sure Kevin or any other producer would have been like, oh my God, this is such a waste of time. Like, why are you doing this? But Kevin allowed us to like chase these things. And we had really never had an opportunity to do that, to like really chase a lot of these stranger ideas and like, what if it sounded like this? Or what if we did this? And, he has just been such an integral part to like creating what we wanted to create with this record that I do think sonically, Kevin is a purist too. Like everything on the record is exactly what it is in this, like those guitars are guitars, the drums are drums. There's no sound replacement. There's no auto tune stuff. There's no, I mean, it's like it's an analog record. So it's like, what you get is what you get. And I think being able to work with Kevin and work within, I wouldn't even call it a limitation, but work within that confine of like trying to create something that really felt that way. I think we wouldn't have been able to do that with anybody else. So, I mean, I think that really lends itself I think that really makes the record sound the way that it should sound, or at least what we thought it should sound like.
No, that's awesome. Is it like, was the pandemic kind of part of why you had the time to like fool around with those crazier ideas? Or,
Um, well, I think, I mean, obviously, just like with everybody else, being not going to a job and not have it like not being able to do anything other than sit down and make music definitely was something that none of us really had ever really had an opportunity to do. So, being able to like, just sit and do that for a while. But I mean, even with Wait for Love or Keep You, I mean, we would go away together for like a week at a time and just write at some secluded place. Because we learned, especially on the Keep You cycle, that it was like for Old Pride and Lack, we would like basically go to band practice, write a song, and then come back and practice a couple times a week and just try to write songs. And it became to be kind of hard to do that. And then we decided what would it be like if we just went away for, I got really inspired by like when I was reading how Justin Vernon would go away, like, and write, in his dad's cabin for, a week and just try to write something and record stuff. And I was like, I think we could do something really cool if we just spend, we already spend so much time together on tour. Let's just spend a week together in a secluded place and just write and see what happens. And it really helped us kind of hone in a lot of the ideas. And when 24 hours a day, your only thing that you have to worry about is writing music, you can really come up with some ideas that maybe you wouldn't have in the 3-hour band practice that you would have had. So I think being able to like take the time and do that was an important thing, but pandemic or not, I mean, I think that we would have probably still put together the record with us going away together and trying to pull it apart, put it back together, pull it apart. We're just crazy like that. I mean, I think we're like, for better or for worse, I mean, we're just crazy when it comes to like, oh, this can be better, this can be weirder, this can be more interesting, this can be this. And, sometimes that can be to your detriment, that sometimes that can be to, a positive thing. But for the most part, I feel like it really worked in our favor to be able to go away and spend time together doing it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you film any of those sessions? Just like hanging out all day writing songs?
yeah, I have like a bunch of random. It's like, again, another hindsight 2020 thing. I wish that I would have done more. But I have like a bunch of stuff, just like random clips that I've put together in this. It's like a minute long video that's almost kind of funny to look at your last like 3-4 years of your life distilled down to like a minute. And it kind of is like poetic in the way of like how it feels like with a record. You spend years writing it and recording it and getting it mastered and sequencing and the artwork and everything, and it's all your hard work is distilled down to like 35 minutes that somebody can put on Spotify and say like, whatever, and then just like pass or whatever. So um, I filmed a bunch of it, probably not as much as I wanted to, especially now that like my wife and I doing kind of getting into doing the music video stuff. I really wish I would have done more. That way I could have really made like a proper kind of, not documentary. I'm definitely I'm not a filmmaker of that thing, but I wish we could have had a lot of more behind the scenes stuff, because I always love that stuff when bands do that. So I'm sure I'll put together all the stuff that we do have at some point and put it out. But yeah, I wish I had more though.
Yeah, because it sounds like a great documentary subject. Like band goes to a cabin for a week. Like,
It's cool,
yeah,
man. I mean, especially my uncle's cabin. It's this 1970s. It's round. It's like a round house that the entire face of it. And it's in the woods in Boise, Virginia, and the entire thing of it is just lined in windows. So when you wake up in the morning, it's just all you're looking at is the woods. And we built these two like makeshift studios to where downstairs was our like live tracking area, and then the upstairs would be like our kind of control room. So we would all make breakfast together, listen to the demos, talk about them, and then we'd go downstairs and work for 6 hours, and then come upstairs for lunch, listen to what we recorded, talk about it, have a beer, go out on the deck, talk about like, where could this go? And then inevitably somebody would make their way downstairs and start riffing on something, and then somebody would join them, and then somebody would join them, and then all of a sudden you have a song that's like, oh, this is interesting. And the organic process of doing that is amazing. And on top of it all, man, it's just like, especially, we're all getting older. I mean, I'll be 35 next week. And it's like, and by no means do I think I'm old, but like, you get older and life has its own responsibilities, has its own things that start taking over the other stuff that you do. And any opportunity that I get to be able to hang out with my bandmates, who truly, I mean, in no exaggeration, I mean, they are my best friends. Like, these are the people that like I hang out with on, whenever I can hang out with people, they're the people that I hang out with. And it's like, I'm so lucky to be in a band of people that not only are just like incredible musicians, but they're my best friends. That the opportunity of being able to go away and be together writing stuff, it's just like, I really am thankful for that. So yeah, I mean, it was a cool thing to do. I'm very thankful for it.
yeah. No, it sounds awesome. Just to go back a little bit to the producer topic. So you did
Mm.
this one with Kevin. The last two were with Will Yip, and I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Will has like defined the sound of like the whole scene. Like, what kind of made you be like, all right, let's work with Kevin again? Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Will is a dream. He's definitely another dude who's just been one of our biggest fans and just such an incredible friend and a great guy. I think just, as it was in the first, we did the first two records with Kevin, and it was not even like it wasn't even like oh, we don't like this, we need to go to somebody new. It was just, hey, what would happen if we went to somebody else? And so we went to Will, and after doing two records with Will, it was like, well, now that we have 10 years removed from recording with Kevin, what would it be like if we, as the band now, the iteration of like the kind of stuff we're creating now, we went back to Kevin? Like, because he's always been, again, like a huge supporter of everything that we've done. That it was like, why not? Like, our whole thing was that we just wanted to work with, somebody who was going to be like super excited about what we were doing. And Kevin was just like, dude, let's just like book as much time as you want, and let's make the wildest thing we can. Like, let's really try to make something crazy. And he was just so excited about it, and we were excited about kind of being so close, like going into a studio that's familiar and a friend that we can be totally like, I think this idea sucks, man. Like, we can't do, like, just being totally forthright with somebody, or being totally honest with somebody during a recording process is super important. And Kevin just, I don't know, he just, I think really knew what we were going for. And the other side of it is, again, he's like such a purist that sonically what we were going for this record, I think kind of only could have been achieved by somebody who was going to just let us do our thing and let's let everything breathe the way that it should. Like, don't worry about perfect, quote unquote, perfect takes, the perfect guitar sound, the perfect whatever sound. And just like, if it vibes with the song and it meshes and it seems right, that's the kind of shit that we need to just like hone in on and really do. And Kevin just was so excited about it, that we were so excited to work with him, that it was just like, it was a no-brainer. And plus he lives, like, no exaggeration, maybe 6 minutes from my house. He lives maybe about 5 minutes from Kyle, maybe 15 minutes from Chad. Like, just, he's so close and local that there could be a day where it was like I would be in my studio and be like, oh man, I just came up with this like wild synth thing with a guitar part. I'm going to bounce it to a stem and I'm just going to send it to you. Just drop it in the session. I'll be over tomorrow. And like, being able to have like that kind of just repertoire with somebody that you can just send them something and then go check it out later tomorrow and he'll have it in the mix is like such a loose, kind of amazing opportunity that it was kind of a no-brainer, you know?
For sure. You mentioned earlier that you did the record with like analog tape. Was that a first for the band, or?
So we didn't do the record to tape. We actually there's a lot of tape on the record. Like every like vocal delay, all of like this one kind of through line thread that you'll hear in the record is these weird degrading kind of loops that are happening. And all those loops were recorded on this like 1960s like Echoplex like tape echo that my boss let us borrow. And so it was almost like trying to use that as like the character, like the characteristic of what the record was going to feel like, almost like this degrading tape and these weird sounds kind of popping in and out. That was intentional to kind of think of that, to like try to use that. But we didn't actually track the record itself to tape. It was analog in the way that it was the only like front end of everything was analog. So, microphone to an analog preamp into a mixing console, that kind of thing. It was dumped into Pro Tools for editing, but we had done tape before with Kevin when we did Lack Long After. And it was awesome. It was just Kevin's tape machine was broken, so we couldn't use it this go around. But there's so much analog like in the record of using like tape. We had every echo really is a tape echo. The reverbs a lot of times were, if they weren't on a pedal, I mean, it was done by reverb tanks, by moving microphones, by stuff that felt more like the way that you'd make a record if it was, in the 70s instead of now. And there's something about the room sound of something that makes feel like, at least personally to me, like just being kind of like a nerd about that kind of stuff myself, like when you can hear a room or hear a space, I think you can build what that looks like in your head, which makes it even more intimate to yourself as a listener, that you can really put yourself in the space. And I really wanted that sound to really come through on the record. And I think Kevin killed it with being able to make it sound that way.
Yeah, I think that comes through. I mean, like I can kind of picture in my head the record and then like this round cabin, and I can see it. Like, yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
And like everybody loves a good cabin in the woods record story. Like,
totally, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really what it was, man. And, it's funny. We actually had an entire record written before this. And we scrapped the whole thing. And it's kind of like so Brian McTurnan and Paul Levitt, they're two producers that are also in Baltimore. They had a studio at this warehouse space that I actually work in, not the studio, but I build amps with my boss in this warehouse. And Brian was going out on tour and basically gave me the keys to the studio and was just like, yo, man, I know you guys are writing, just have fun. And this was like in the summer of 2019. And we had a bunch of demos and stuff that we were working on and all this stuff. And we got to the studio, man, and we literally just could not get, like, the songs just weren't there. Like, we had a bunch of songs and they were cool, but it was like, I just don't think this is enough of a jump for us. Like, I feel like the songs are fine, but they're like, they just don't feel like a record. So we scrapped the entire thing. And it was like a weird time for our band, man. A lot of it being like, man, do we like it? What do we do? Like we wrote a whole record and like, this doesn't even really feel right. Is this kind of like the end of this? And, we just kind of shelved everything for months, and then the pandemic hit and it was like, maybe we can try again, I guess. But writing a whole record and then scrapping it was like the kind of like the rebirth of being like, you know what, we just need to do a no holds barred, like everybody's ideas just need to like come to light. Every weird idea, every weird thing that somebody wants to try, we really just need to make this like be as cool and as big as it can be. And I'm really happy we scrapped all that stuff, because I mean, and when I mean scrapped, I mean, we had probably 12 songs, something like that we didn't even salvage anything to use on the new record. I mean, we literally scrapped all of it, tossed it out, probably never will be heard, and started from scratch. And I'm really glad we did, because I think it really gave us a new perspective on what we really wanted to do as a band, and it breathed a whole new life into what we were doing.
Do the recordings still exist?
They do. They do. They exist, but it'll be...
So there's like a legendary lost Pianos Become a Teeth album.
Yeah.
People will for decades seek out.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I mean, some of them are instrumental, some of them have some like scratch vocal stuff on them, but like, no joke, I mean, there's like between 10 and 15 songs that we had that were just like, now just in the ether. They just disappeared. And it's also something nice about not being so precious about something and just letting it, knowing within our band, like, this just isn't where we want to go. Like, I know we can do better. And I'm really glad that we did.
Now, in between the last two records, you kind of all did, or not all, but you had a few side projects.
Mm-hmm.
Did that kind of like help maybe give you a chance to like get some ideas out that weren't going to be the next Pianos Become a Teeth record?
I think honestly, at least personally for me, it almost did the opposite. It gave me more confidence to be able to introduce some of the kind of weirder, more electronic stuff that maybe might not have fit in earlier piano stuff or any other piano stuff. That it gave me the confidence to know, like, well, I think I can write something that would be kind of more interesting on like the electronic side that would fit our band. So I think instead of getting it out and not letting it influence pianos, it kind of did the flip where it like, we got it out, but it luckily influenced the kind of the stuff that we were doing. And I think like, we're all kind of people that want to stay busy doing stuff. We just really enjoy making things. I think everybody in our band just really enjoys creating. So I think it was just like the interest of like everybody kind of figuring out what other stuff they really enjoyed doing. And I think in a way it really influenced how we could come together and, write the best thing that we could. You always, like me and Kyle always talk about how it's like when you write something, it's almost like right off the bat, if it's going to be something that is going to be a pianos thing or a something else thing. And there's just some weird through line that all of us, just know out of each other that, you just know this person's really going to like this thing. A good example actually is on the new record. David actually came up with the ending to one of the songs on the record, Mouth. And he came up with this like super weird, like just really hard side chaining, like pumping kick drum that had this like weird, almost like heartbeat effect that it was just like an outer worldly thing. And I remember him playing the demo like to me after he'd come up with it was like, I think you're really going to dig this. And it's like one of my favorite parts of the whole record. So I think like being able to know where everybody's kind of coming from as well as their influences and knowing that it's influencing the band, I think we all kind of know how to write with each other in mind. And we started doing this thing on this record that David was always talking about, where it's like coming up with something where it was like, who's in the driver's seat for this song, which helped us. It was like this weird moment where it almost flipped all of our like mental ideas of like what a song needs, because most musicians, I think, want to be continually writing something that they love or it's challenging to them or interesting to them. But sometimes that's not the thing that services the song the best. And, you know, this record really let us shine with a lot of that stuff, where it was like, I don't care that I'm playing the same note for, you know, the entire intro or whatever. I'm not the focus of this part. The focus is Kyle's vocal or David's drum part or Zach's bass part or Chad's, you know, melodic part. Like, that's okay. And I think being able to kind of have that mentality really helped us create kind of the best sounding thing, regardless of who was doing what.
For sure. I feel like you really need that just to like,
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah. Well, what were some of the maybe bigger like shared musical influences on this record, like specific artists or songs?
Oh man. Um, that is a really hard question, because I don't know. I don't know if there is like a lot of shared things. I think
Or
like
even some of yours personally, if that's easier.
so yeah. So some of mine personally were this artist Lorne. They're like an electronic artist that does like super heavy, dark, textural electronic music. I just loved how he was able to convey unbelievably like dark and heavy emotion through these like big textural sounds. Like his records sound like kind of fucked up and weird, but like they're these just blown out analog, out of tune, weird sounding things that I think like the idea of being imperfect and kind of things falling apart sonically and stuff just not uh, like almost like the sense of unease. That was probably like the biggest kind of movement for me, like making songs, was trying to make stuff that just really uh, spoke on a deeper level emotionally. So it was like Lorne, this artist, Nomak, released this record that has like a visual component to it that's absolutely beautiful. That was really, really amazing. Yeah, what else? I mean, yeah, it's strange because I feel like even a lot of this stuff, I didn't even approach guitar on this record with like, oh man, I want to write a guitar part. A lot of it was just like, I want to write a texture that works for this part. I've always really been into Portishead, so like creating kind of like the sonics of how dry a lot of their records were. I really loved how like on our song Easy as well as Skiv, like everything is so dry. It kind of brings you into this almost claustrophobic feeling that I loved how those early Portishead records would do. My Bloody Valentine, actually, the Loveless record, just how kind of insane it's mixed, how there's just a million guitars, but they just become this like almost wall of like moving static that I love. I feel like approaching the record more as not to sound like whatever, but I feel like I approaching it more as like an art project rather than it being like, oh, these songs need to be singles, they need to be hits or whatever. I think just approaching them as like every song is telling something or saying something. How can we write music that conveys that? And I think that was like the biggest thing, really trying to do well.
Totally. Was it hard to pick singles? I think I want to say I read that maybe Kyle said that like it's like please listen to the record start to finish. I
Yeah,
think that was written somewhere.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean I think it's one of those records. Like it's
I think so too.
I don't think it comes across, not to say anything negative about the singles, but I think you have to hear the record
Definitely.
and so was it like tough to be like what song can we show people first?
Yes. Honestly, this was the hardest record I think we've ever had to try to pick singles, because the singles that I had like chosen initially were totally different than what everybody else had chosen, but everybody had their own idea, I guess, of what that they wanted to showcase. But I think once we landed on like Genevieve and Skiv and Buckley being the ones that were going to be the ones that everybody was going to hear first, it felt like, okay, this will at least give you the taste of just kind of sonically how weird this record can get. Like, especially with Skiv or like Buckley being this very kind of strange, not even a post rock thing, but it just has these very long passages that kind of grow and grow. Like, it was really hard to pick what singles were going to be the things that were going to represent the record. But at the same time, it was like, if you dig our band or dig these singles, I think you're going to dig the record. But it really is something that I think you need to spend just 35 minutes putting headphones on and just like sitting and listening to, because I think you don't really get to hear what the record feels like until you do that. And it takes time too. I think it keeps opening up. Even now, like I'll listen to the record. It's funny that I going back and like relearning some of the stuff to like practice. It's like there's some stuff tracked in there that I'm like, oh shit, I didn't realize there was a harmonica in here. Who did that? Like just moments like that where it's like it's even still opening up to me. And I think if people just sit and give it time, I think it's going to be something that people will also enjoy if they want to spend time, which is a risk, man, especially in 2022 when everything's distilled down to singles and 2-minute sound bites and TikTok and Instagram. It's like, we've never been that band. We will never be that band, probably. So it's like, if you dig what we do, I do think that every single one of our records is something that is kind of a start to finish thing. But this record especially, I think really needs to be listened to from start to finish.
Yeah, and I feel like if you listen to Pianos Become the Teeth, then you're the kind of person who's going to sit down with the record.
I
Like,
think so too.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's kind of, we have the best fans in the world to where they get us. Like if you dig our band, you get like what we do. And I think it really isn't distilled down into like a 2-minute single with like 4 songs on the record that you're kind of whatever about. It's like you just listen to the record and you'll see where that one song fits into the bigger picture of the whole thing.
yeah. I definitely think that is the way it all kind of comes together because I especially like on the record too. I like there's I don't know maybe 3 or 4 parts that maybe count as heavy,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like they're so earned, you know, like it's not just like let's make a heavy song because like people think that we're a screamo band and we have to do that.
Totally.
It's like the heavy part comes at like, and it's such a sort of release because you've waited 8 songs for it or
Dude,
something, you know, like.
thank you, man. That
Mhm.
like that really is kind of like the. I'm glad you picked up on that because I think that's the best way to say it is like it gets to the point where it's earned, where it's like, yeah, you can end every song with a giant big climax, but if you do that every time, it's like if everything is loud, then nothing's loud. So it's like, but if you have a couple moments where things are loud, then they're even louder than they might have been had it happened even more, you know?
Yeah, I mean, something I've just been thinking about recently because, you know, I'm a nerd and I do stuff like this, is I love like when bands that are not considered heavy bands will have that moment because it's like so intense
Totally,
when, you know what I
totally.
mean?
Yeah, man.
Like
Yeah,
it's like you can listen to like the heaviest metal record in the world, but it's like by song 4 it almost starts to, like you said, not be heavy anymore because it's like the expected is happening. But if like
exactly.
an indie rock band has like a sludge metal part, you're like, what the fuck?
Man,
Like,
dude, there's this the live tame yeah, it's the live Tame Impala record. They have like a almost like a Sabbath like stoner riff like era in like the first 30 minutes of it, somewhere in it, that every time I hear it I'm like, damn, what a awesome awesome part. But had the whole record been that way, I probably wouldn't have thought that. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
for sure. I have to find that because I don't think I've heard their live record,
Oh my
and I
god,
would love
man.
to hear them do some Sabbath stuff.
It is insane. My boss plays it at the shop all the time, and it is just like every time the intro gives me chills every time because of just how insane it sounds. Like it's so cool. You got to hear it. It's
I'm
awesome.
definitely, yeah, that sounds killer.
Yeah.
So you have a tour coming up with some really cool other bands. I mean, you have like Jerome's Dream, like Screamo
That like
Legends.
literally a dream, like truly a dream, no pun intended, but like
Right.
an actual dream to be able, and that's another thing of just being, years ago we played like the reunion show for You and I, which was like a
Hmm.
holy shit moment for me and Kyle, like being able to tour with Jerome's Dream, being able to tour with Loma, honestly was like one of the, like Sean, like all the Loma dudes were like, that was one of my favorite tours I've ever done because they were incredible. So it was like being able to do tours with bands that we've looked up to for so long or been influenced by for so long. It's just like, how did I get here? Like, this is insane.
Hmm. It's actually cool too that like you're taking. I mean, not that Jerome's Dream existed back like 10 years ago, but it's cool that you're taking them out on like the opposite of a screamo record for your
Totally.
band. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
like
Totally. And I think, and like, just talking to them about it, it's like they're stoked on it in the same way that we're stoked on it, where it's just like, we're just old dudes that just want to have fun, man. Like,
right.
we want to tour with bands that see the same thing that we do. And it's just all, I mean, we're just, at the end of the day, man, we're just really simple people. Like, we just like having a good beer, hanging with, hanging with like friends that make good music, and just kind of being quiet. As much as like the music maybe doesn't feel that way sometimes, it's just like we just really dig kind of the simple parts of life. So being able to like have these opportunities of touring with bands that I never thought in my life that I'd ever have the opportunity to even see live, much less tour with, like, is mind blowing to me.
For sure. So also on the tour you have Cara Cara Dosser. I think, are you wearing a Dosser
I'm wearing a
shirt right
Dawson
now?
shirt right
Yeah.
now. Yep.
And then
Shout out
Dream
to Eric.
Tigers.
He'll have to listen to this.
Yeah, hope so.
He will. I'll
And
force it. He's a friend of ours. I'll force it.
awesome. And then Dream Tigers, which is like members of Caspian and I
Yeah.
think Defeater and stuff.
Yep.
So what made you pick those other three bands?
So, well, one of the big things too was whoever, like, the tour schedule's kind of like wonky, and like being able to like whoever wanted to kind of go on this kind of interesting journey with us, where it's like, it's not a month of one band doing one thing. It's like we got to break it up into those cycles. So it was almost like, who would be interested in doing that? And we played with Cara Cara before. They were amazing, awesome, like super nice, like amazing people to even just hang out with. So the fact they were even into it was amazing. Dosser is almost like it's a dream to take them out because they're just friends. And Eric, who plays bass in that band, he's tour managed us since 2016, 15. So he's been around with us for like forever, and he's been in local band. He actually was staying at our house all last week because he was taking care of my wife and I's cat and house sitting while we were at like going on vacation. It's just the opportunity of being able to like take out your friends that, they're a Baltimore band that's working their ass off. And my whole thing has always been, I want to be able to take out like friends. I always just want to get to a point to where I can pay my friends to hang out with me, like, and get into that opportunity. And like that's always been like the goal of mine, to just like constantly have fun. And the fact that Jerome's Dream even was able to do it was just like a holy shit moment for me. But Sean, their one guitar player who also plays in Loma Prieta, like, I hit him up and just asked him, like, I know you guys probably have a million things that you could be doing, but would you be at all interested in doing it? And the fact that he was like, we would love to do it, was just like, oh, holy shit. Okay. Let's make this happen. Like, whatever we have to do to make this happen, let's do it. So, we're really, really lucky to have the bands that are going to come out with us. And, I think if people like, I will say, I think this will be the most fun shows that if people come to see us, like, this will be our first shows. This is the longest break we've ever had as a band in 15 years. So if people want to see probably the most like unhinged and craziest our band has probably been, it's probably going to be within these shows. So I'm really excited.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
Better put that on my calendar now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I'm stoked. I definitely want us to catch the tour. It should be really fun.
Yeah, man.
Are you like? I mean, like you said, it's been a while. Are you like excited, nervous, both to tour again?
Oh man, that is such a loaded question, man. I'm beyond excited, but I've never in my life had the level of anxiety that I have now. And I think that probably is compounding from a lot of things. I mean, I think prior to pandemic, prior to a lot, like I think that my brain was always on the go, go, go kind of thing. Like I was always kind of sectioning out my life into month long intervals. Like, oh, we're on tour for this month and we're recording here, and then I work here, and then I do this, and but now that stuff has like slowed down because everybody was kind of forced to slow down and stay kind of reclusive because you're at home, and then relearning how to talk to people when you're not talking to people for a long time. I have a very palatable amount of anxiety that I've never really had before, and I'm sure it comes with wanting to be the best like band we possibly can be live for people. So I'm sure like there's part of that to me is just like, oh man, we haven't played in so long. Like I just want these shows to go, and we're practicing, so, and it sounds great. So it's like it'll be okay. It's just anxiety for me is a new thing that I'm really trying to like kind of learn and cope with, and doing all the best things I can to like take care of my mental health and really do yoga, go on runs, like really try to do stuff that's good for me mentally. And I think I'm getting to the place now where the excitement is overtaking the anxiety, but I don't think the anxiety is going to go away. I think until probably after a couple shows in, and it's just a whole new world, man. Like, and it's a hard thing to like be able to really know how to swallow, and kind of just how to exist properly, like in the ether that we are in now. And it's definitely beyond exciting to go out on tour again, and beyond excited to play shows. I mean, like I've been lucky enough to be able to have played some shows like for my own stuff like over the last year, but this is just a whole new animal, like trying to like learn how to like redo this in a band atmosphere, and then go to venues, and like it's just a whole different thing. So I'm really excited, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I was like shitting bricks, nervous, and also just like beyond, like the anxiety is definitely like very, very. I'm very aware of it.
Sure. I mean, I feel like the world we're in now has given a lot of people more anxiety than ever.
Totally, man.
Yeah.
And it's a new thing that I've never really thought about so much. So it's like learning about it, learning how to cope with it, and trying to figure out how to do it is like, yeah, it's we're all human, and we all have to be kind to ourselves and be kind to those around us, and do everything that we can as we're kind of relearning how to be human together.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think it'll be awesome. I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
yeah, even just like finally getting out and playing again, it's like it's going to be cathartic.
Totally, man. I think
Yeah,
that's the thing that I'm looking forward to, is like just the release of it, just the feeling that it's going to be something like, oh man, like we did it. Like I can't wait for that. And honestly, I can't imagine being around. Um, I'm very lucky to have the four guys that I have that are my kind of like rock in a lot of that stuff. Because if I feel scared or anxious or nervous or feel weird about anything, like, all of us are always in each other's like best interests. Like, are you good? Like, what can I do? How can I help you? And we've always been in that boat of always trying to help one another be the best, and help each other be good, and just be a friend. And I think this is going to be the tours that we're going to have to learn how to do that together, and just really learn how to do these things together.
totally. Um, well, before you were saying how Dosser is like also a Baltimore band, and I don't know if it was you or another member, but somebody had tweeted from the Piano's account recently about like how awesome the scene in Baltimore is right now, how much great music is coming out of
Yeah.
Baltimore. And I mean, like there's like the new Praise record,
Oh,
which
so
Kevin and
good.
Brian McTernan also were both on, and so it just feels like it's this whole little community of like people who work together, and like
Totally, man.
like as a Baltimore music scene person, like what is the scene like from to you? Like how would you sort of describe it to someone who hasn't been
Man.
there?
Oh my God. It's like incredible in like so many ways. So it's like, and I'm not even probably as tuned in as some people are, but like the fact that the most eclectic like rounding of bands are coming out of here. And I mean, we have Beach House that is just, giant, but it's like, Beach House is a band that was playing like, my wife's art, like school 10 years ago, like, playing in their auditorium, or not even their auditorium, but like a student's like center. Future Islands are from here, another band that's also, you will see them at local shows, just hanging and doing stuff. We have an incredible like metal scene. There's this band from here called Genocide Pact that is like their record that came out this year is one of my favorite records that's come out so far this year. Kevin's band, who actually recorded all these, recorded all the records, his band Triac is like, they're like a grind band, and it's like his band is incredible. You got a lot of like a Dosser, you have like a grunge like rock stuff, you have us doing whatever the hell we are, and then like kind of I just think there's so much happening. Oh man, I mean JPEG Mafia is from Baltimore, and he's in LA now, I think, but like JPEG Mafia is from Baltimore. Butch Dawson is another incredible rapper from Baltimore. Like we just have so much stuff happening on the like every angle of like between rock and hip hop and rap and metal and grind and punk. It's like there's not a place you can go without seeing it happen. And I think Baltimore is an interesting city because it lends itself to that kind of not grunge in the sense of like the music side, but kind of like the more industrial side of like a city. It's like you go anywhere and the bands that are playing kind of reflect kind of the ambience of the city that they're in. And I think there's something really cool kind of about these kinds of bands that are just like, not just blowing up, but just like doing incredible stuff. I mean, Turnstile, like like the fact that we have Praise, Turnstile, Beach House, Future Islands, like it's an honor to be a part of the music scene in this city. And I think that Baltimore tends to get overlooked in a lot of ways. Like, most bands are going to do Boston, New York, Philly, and then probably skip over us and go to like maybe DC, but maybe even skip over DC and go somewhere else. Like Baltimore just is like this hub that if people incubate long enough, you're going to have forever fans because people just love music and culture here. And they love the farther you can push it outside of its comfortable realms. And I think that that's like, I can't ask for a better place to have our band exist in and be accepted in. Cause I really don't think that we would be able to exist almost anywhere else. Just being, we're not quite heavy enough for the heavy crowd. We're not quite soft enough for the soft crowd. We're not like, Baltimore's the only place that I've ever really felt like home with a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, we're really lucky to be a part of that.
That's the exciting stuff, though, when it's like not quite this for that,
totally,
or not for this.
Totally.
That's when the cool stuff happens.
Exactly. That's how you get bands that just want to keep pushing stuff and do something more interesting and different than they maybe would have done before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is what's really cool about your band and like a lot of the the peers we've talked about throughout this conversation. Like just kind of thinking about like if you compare like you guys and Touche and La Dispute and all these bands to like sort of the previous generation of like post-hardcore bands, like I don't know if you look at like Thursday or stuff like that, and it's like I feel like those bands got really big at a time and this kind of music was really big, and there was all these expectations from the media and from fans and from festivals and labels and all this, like, and major labels were involved, and I feel like there was all this pressure to be something that people didn't necessarily want to be. And I feel like you and your peers have like had this opportunity to like off the bat be like, we're for the weirder people, we're for the people who get. And then so like when you like, I mean, if you look at like the records like La Dispute are making now, like they're nuts, and it's like you always knew they had that in them and you always wanted them to do it. Like,
and I think that's like, I mean, isn't that more exciting? Like I don't ever want to put on a record from a band that I'm like into, or even maybe I've never heard before, whatever. I never want to put on a record and just be like, oh yeah, that was what I expected. Like I always want to be, and for better or for worse, maybe it's a detriment, but I always want to be challenged. Like I always exist in the ugly. Like I really love the uncomfortable, the stuff that most people are just like, I don't know if that's for me. Like I like one, like somebody made that for a reason. And I like finding out that reason, like, or diving in and figuring out why it sounds the way it does and why a band spent time or why an artist spent time making it sound this way or why the lyrics are this way or what, like, one of another example is like an artist like Bon Iver, where like,
Mm-hmm.
going from this anthemic giant sound that he had on his self-titled record and then distill it down to 22 a million where it just feels like a broken cassette tape that you found on the street. That
Mm-hmm.
record, like, even, I mean, I'm getting chills even thinking about it because like there's something about when I first heard that was like, it's almost like I'm reading somebody's journal I shouldn't be reading. And it's like, those are the kind of artists that I always gravitate towards because I feel like you're trying to say something, but you're also trying to say something like sonically on top of lyrically that maybe most people are just going to pass by because they can't get past like the weirdness that it already exists in. But those are the records that I'm always going to gravitate towards and just be like, man, why is this way? I mean, and it comes like a lot of pop artists do that too. Like a dude Flume, his new record, um, it is like pop music, but turned up to like a million, where it's just so left field. I was still am a huge fan of Sophie and like all these,
Mm-hmm.
hyper pop artists that were making stuff that like this shouldn't work, but it does on so many levels. And that is just the stuff that I love existing in that realm of just trying to distill down an artist's reasons or why they're doing what they're doing and just really trying to like tap into that like mindset. Why did you make this? And if you made it for a reason, did you achieve your goal? And I don't know. I love that stuff, man. I love it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I this will sound pretentious. I don't mean it that way, but like it's always fun when there's like a little bit of an entry barrier or like
Totally,
if
totally.
you don't like something at first and then you like it like a year later, I feel like it sticks with you in such a more impactful way than if you just kind of like off the bat were like solid and then you forget it exists and like
Totally, man. It's like and you always know those records when you listen to it the first time and you're like, oh, I don't know. But you,
mhm.
for some reason, put it on again.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, you put it on again and you just keep doing it. And then eventually you're like, shit, I actually love this because of this. And it's not, I feel like the records that I never want to exist in is the one that somebody listens to once and they're just like, that was good. And then they never, never listen to it again because it's like, it didn't fire those parts of your brain that made you want to say like, well, shit, why did this make me feel this way? Like, why did this do, I mean, when I was listening to like early Discord stuff, it made me feel that way. Like the Rites of Spring records or Embrace or like any of those bands were like, as a teen listening to them, it was like, I like this, but I don't get it yet. I don't understand why it's making me feel this way, but I like it, so I should keep revisiting it. And I've always wanted to be that, which might pull you into the scope that maybe you won't be the biggest artist on earth, but maybe you will, because it's like, who knew that, like, say somebody like Kevin Shields recording Loveless with, a million guitar parts and, what it sounds insane. Who knew that that would become what it would become? He was making, they were making a record that they just wanted to make. And that's that. I love that. I just want to constantly challenge myself as well as the people that listen to us. It's just like, hey man, it's for you too. Come on in, but you got to sit with it for a while. Like you got to spend time with it before it'll open itself up to you. Just like a relationship, just like a friend. Like you got to spend time because like the best things in life take time, man. I mean, they really take time for them to like develop to you, and that's always what I've loved.
Totally. Well, before we go, is there anything else you want to shout out or add that we haven't talked about?
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, I'd say like if we're coming to your city on this tour, like please come out. We'd love to see you. Like we don't get to tour nearly as often anymore, and I don't. We are in the same boat as everybody else is, where it's like I don't know what touring will look like for our band, in the years to come or whatever it is. So it's just like any opportunity, especially now where it's like live music was taken from everybody for so long that it's like in this opportunity, if we are coming to your city, please come hang. Definitely want to shout out all the bands that we're touring with: Dosser, Cara Cara, obviously Drome's Dream and Dream Tigers. Like, go listen to those bands, spend time with their records. I don't know who will listen to this, but I miss all my friends that I haven't had a chance to see in years. But like, yeah, man, I think if people dig our band, or if they're wanting to go on some sort of like ride with stuff, just put on, when our record comes out, put it on. Comes out August 26th. Please just spend some time with it. It would mean a lot to us, and that is kind of the only hope that we have, is that people find their time with it, they really enjoy, and hope people dig it as much as we dug making it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mike.
Hey, man, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for having me. Like, I hope we get to do this again soon.
Totally. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
Hey, so thanks again to Mike. Thanks for listening. Go check out Drift, catch Pianos on Tour, and stay tuned for our next episode.